Can we skip to the good part?
It doesn't really work that way.
What do you mean? I did the thing with the hand.
Yeah, no, that's not actually real. It's not. You have to actually finish it.
I do?
Yeah.
Ah, fuck.
Good morning, everybody. Today we're taking down the plaster in the second bedroom on the second floor of the house. I am always so happy to have help when I have to work on the plaster around these bump out windows. The plaster in these tight little areas can be so stubborn and frustrating to work with, so it is always nice to have a second set of hands. You may also have noticed that in the last couple of videos we are using this new long-handled scraper tool. Dad picked this up after seeing your recommendations in the comments that we get a similar tool, and he loved it immediately. It did take me some time to get used to it, but you'll see by the end of this video I was using it a lot more frequently, and you'll definitely see it being used in all of the future plaster removal videos. On this wall I found that beautiful floral wallpaper that you can see in the center there, but it was fused to the plaster, so I couldn't scrape it off to add it to my collection. Instead, I took the entire piece of plaster off the wall and saved that for later to see if I can find a way to get it separated. If you're new to my page, you may not know this yet, but I am saving at least one piece of every single wallpaper that I find in the house, with the intention of turning it into artwork and decor that'll go up in the house once it's finished. I love the idea of featuring the history of this house in my final design, because a lot of life has happened in this house since it was built in the late 1800s. Unfortunately, significant water damage and the necessary systems updates that need to happen in the house to get it up to code mean all of this plaster does have to come down, but I intend on preserving as much of the original detailing in the house as possible, so that includes all of the original hardwood flooring and trim work, and even the small details throughout the house like the door handles and some of the light fixtures. And I'll be bringing you along every step of the way. Some of you who have been following along for a while mentioned that you were missing seeing the cleanup process at the end of my last few plaster removal videos, so I made sure to include it here. This room needed a good sweep anyway. It's going to get dirty again as I work through the rest of the rooms on this floor, but you know I love to start and end every project with a clean slate, and this helped me do just that. I will come back through and take down the ceilings and pull all the lath off of the walls, but for now, here's what the room's looking like.
It came out great, and just in time for the snow. In the morning when
Okay, I just woke up. When I went to bed last night, there was like 980,000 of you. So we're gonna see if we hit 1 million. I'm like shaking. That video was taken 2 days ago, but it seriously has taken me this long to fully process that there are over 1 million of you following along. It's been so much fun to reflect on where I started and to hear from so many of you that have been here from the start, or those of you that find me every single day and binge my content. It's because of all of you that I am where I am today, so I am planning a special little giveaway for you guys. I'm still trying to iron out the logistics and the details, but I will go live tonight. I have some unboxing I need to do, and I'll announce the giveaway and let you know how you can enter and what it will include. I plan on going live at 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time tonight. It'll probably go a couple hours because we have a lot of packages to open. Look at this, it's taller than I am. But come, hang out, ask questions. I love being able to interact with you guys real time. I try to answer as many comments as possible, but I find it's a lot easier to address things on live. So I hope to see you later. Good morning, everybody. To celebrate hitting 1 million followers here on TikTok, I've decided to do a giveaway, and Mom is going to help. I'll be giving away one set of 4 resin coasters that feature wallpaper from the house. At the end of this video, you'll see all the different wallpapers that I have to choose from, and the winner will get to choose up to 4 different wallpapers to put in their coasters. All you have to do to enter is make sure you're following me and then like and comment on this video. Here are some examples that Mom made up. I was showing them off on my live last night, but in case you missed them, there they are. And here are all the wallpapers. There are some more recent and some that are original to the house. I tried to get a little bit of everything for you guys. You have until 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sunday, December 5th to enter. And I'll be picking the winner on Monday the 6th. Good luck, everybody. I guess it's time to start taking down some more plaster because this is the last plaster removal update I have for you guys on my camera roll right now. This is the landing on the 2nd floor. Because this room connects to the staircase, I only had 3 walls to do, which made it a pretty quick and easy process. As usual, the hardest part was around the window, but even that went pretty quickly. I've learned to start on the exterior walls because they're usually the hardest. They have blown in insulation in them from the previous owner, and because the wall is not empty, it is harder to break the keys off the back of the plaster into the wall. So exterior walls require a bit more scraping than these interior ones do. In a second, I slowed a clip down so you can see what it looks like in real time when I'm pulling off the water-damaged plaster. You can see below where I'm scraping now, the plaster is already fully separated from the wall. So really all I'm doing when scraping is breaking it up into smaller pieces that will fit down into the chute. If I hadn't hit it with a sledgehammer, I probably could have pulled a huge section of this plaster off all in one piece. And here I am just pulling the parts that I can reach down with my hands to show you how easy it comes off the wall. This is a great example of why I am taking the plaster down. A majority of the walls and ceilings in this house have water damage to some degree. Most of them are beyond repair and would have to be fully replaced, and the sections that could be repaired are so minimal that it's not worth keeping those small areas. I've had a lot of people say they're upset I'm taking the plaster down, saying it's ruining the integrity of the house, but trust me, I would not be spending all of this time taking the plaster down if it was not something that needed to happen. I did a lot of research, I got quite a few opinions, and this is the right move for my house. I totally respect it if you would have done it differently, but I just wanted to take a little bit of time to better explain that, since I get quite a few comments about it. These are the satisfying switches that I showed in the video I posted a few days ago. I did cap the wires, but apparently I forgot to hit record, so you're gonna have to take my word for it. But once I was taken care of, I was able to finish scraping this little section of wall. In all, this room took me about 2 hours to complete, and I must say I'm pretty proud of how quick my cleanup process is now. I've been working on it. I did not do a sweep in here because I still have more plaster removal to do on this floor, so it's just gonna get crazy dusty again. But when it is time for a sweep, I promise I will post the footage for you guys. Now it's time to move to the back half of the 2nd floor. While the roof was being worked on last month and before it was completely done, we had some storms come through that led to a lot of water getting into the house. Once the roof was done and I knew there would be no more water, I came in to clear out all of the insulation that was sitting in the wall on this 1st floor bedroom. I also found my first sign of rot in the house while working on this project, which explains why the porch is a little bit saggy. Now, all of this insulation was already here when I bought the house. The previous owner had done a few updates, and in this bedroom they had re-insulated 2 of the walls and put drywall up instead of plaster. So I had already planned on removing this insulation. This was not a surprise job or any issue that arose. It just finally seemed like the right time to take care of it. What the camera's not really picking up is how nasty this insulation is. There is obvious signs of mice or other critters living in the insulation, and this black stuff all down the back is just dirt from what I can tell. The water that comes in through the roof, or did come in through the roof, was a nasty dark brown color, so I think that's just remnants of that water over time. At first I thought it was mold, but I can't find any other signs of mold on this wall, so that's my best guess. And here's some close-up shots showing you what this insulation looks like as I pull it out real time. I was very glad that I remembered to wear my respirator while working on this project, because there was a lot of disgusting stuff in the insulation, and even some that I didn't really expect to find. All I know is none of it looked like things I should be breathing in. This was a pretty quick project, and it was messier than I expected it to be, but I actually found it kind of fun. It was definitely a nice break from taking down plaster, which I don't get very often these days because of where I am in the renovation. So I was glad to have something else to work on, even if it was just for a few minutes. This little part looks slow motion somehow, but it's because this insulation was pretty wet, and as I pulled it out, it was all just falling apart, so I was trying to go slow to get it all in one piece, but clearly failed. I only pulled the insulation out around these windows and didn't continue on to that wall you can see on the right, because this is where the water was coming in. But after seeing how widespread the water damage was on the second floor, I do want to come back down and take the insulation out on this other wall as well. So let me know if that's something you guys want to see. I just realized this video's been sitting in my drafts, and I definitely meant to share it with you guys. My sister's an interior designer, and she's agreed to help me map out the house to help with the renovation. She came by a few weeks ago, and we walked through the entire house, getting every measurement possible. She had me go around the room and measure every length of wall, window, door, and the distance in between everything. And as I went, she mapped it out on graph paper. Later on, she took those measurements and put them into a software that she uses, which I'll have to get the name of it for you. And that will allow her to create basically a 3D model of the floor plan of the house. And hopefully I'll be able to share some of that with you soon. As many of you know, I've spent a little bit less time at the house in recent weeks, just with the holiday and work trips and family in town. It hasn't really worked out for me to spend as much time here as I would have liked. Despite that, I was still able to have a third of the plaster removal completed going into this past weekend. And when I came into the house on Saturday, I was ready to get stuff done. The first room I tackled was this back bedroom on the second floor. As usual, I started with the exterior walls first, since these are the harder walls to get down with that blown-in insulation filling the wall. Luckily, there are no bay windows or odd shapes in this room. It's just long, flat walls, which makes for much easier plaster removal. You can get better leverage. I can use the long-handled scraper here, which I can't use in tighter spaces. So for someone like me who loves efficiency, these walls are my favorite. You may notice that I have started removing more trim as I go along. I'm still not able to get it all off because some of it is still being stubborn, but I got a trim puller from a follower, and it worked wonders this weekend. I don't know where this tool has been the past few months, but I am glad to have it now. It makes me so optimistic about the amount of trim I'll be able to save now. Before, there was about a 50-50 chance that the trim would break as I pried it off the wall, and I think I only broke one piece all weekend, which is a major improvement. And I can't wait to go back through and take the trim down in the rest of the house where the plaster's already come down. I tried to include some slower clips, these are just in 2x speed, of the plaster being removed so you can see what it looks like closer to real time. In this room especially, there was a lot of water damage, which if you've watched my other plaster removal videos, you know that makes it so easy to take off the wall because it's pretty much already separated itself. I get a lot of questions about what's happening with the lath and the plaster on the ceiling. So once I get all of the plaster off of the walls, I will come back through and get the plaster off of the ceilings as well. And then I'll take down any of the lath that needs to come out. So on exterior walls, it's going to be all of it so we can insulate. And on interior walls, it'll be just enough for the electrician to get in. Floor that I have not been looking forward to taking the plaster out of, and this room is one of them. And the reason for that is also my favorite feature in this room, which is the bay windows. This is one of 2 sets in the house, the other one is in the first floor dining room. And I knew from removing that plaster in the dining room downstairs that this was going to take me forever. The angles of the plaster in between the windows makes it nearly impossible to get any sort of leverage when trying to remove the plaster. and that means you really have to use your muscles when going at this space. It also doesn't help that this trim doesn't want to cooperate, and when I try to pull it off the wall, it starts to break. So I left it up there so I can come back through at a different time to take it down, and I just worked around it. There was so much footage here, I had to put the time lapse into 2x speed just so I could fit this whole project in one video. And watching it back now, it really doesn't look like it was that bad. And maybe you'll think I'm being dramatic, but it was my least favorite part of the weekend, and I was so glad when it was over. If you look through those doorways there, you can see the chute that I'm using for the bins of plaster. Instead of having to carry the bins all the way down the stairs and out to the dumpster, Dad built me a nice little chute that goes out the second floor window and leads directly to the dumpster. So in previous second floor videos, when you've seen me disappear from the screen with a bin for a minute, that's where I'm going. For some reason in this room, the plaster was spread very thin on a few of the walls. And thin plaster is actually harder to scrape off than the thick stuff because it's tougher to get in behind it. There's less for the scraper to catch on to get in underneath the plaster, so more often than not I ended up scraping over the top of it. But that didn't stop me from making pretty quick work of the rest of this room after I got through that window section. I used 2 tarps in here because the room was pretty large, so when I went to clean up, I started by pouring all of the plaster off of one tarp into the other so I could make one big pile to scoop and take to the chute. And here's another angle of me using the chute. And with that room done, I am officially over the halfway point with plaster removal on the second floor. Shout out to the second floor pantry for being the quickest plaster removal yet. The full wall of built-ins meant I had one less wall to worry about, and the trimmer on the doorways and window came off so easily, which always makes for quicker plaster removal. In all, this room took me about an hour to complete, and for reference, the laundry room on the first floor has the exact same dimensions as this room, just no built-in cabinets, and that room took me about 2 hours to do. I know I'm getting more efficient with my plaster removal, which certainly helps, but I was still really shocked with how quickly this project went. I can't wait to see this room fully completed. I already know I'm gonna love it. It already looks so much better. As you can see, this second floor kitchen has become a bit of a storage space for me while I work on the second floor plaster. However, I'm finally at the point where I'm ready to start taking plaster down in this room, so it's time to get it cleared out. This pile of wood over here came from the cabinets that I ripped out in this room. Most of the wood was rotted, but I saved any pieces that were still solid. Once I got the piles of wood out, I moved on to taking down the trim. In this room, there was not a lot of original trim work left. As you can see from all the colors on the wall, this room has gotten several updates over the years, so I guess someone replaced the trim at some point. Which was actually good news for me, because I don't have to worry about saving it.
So I did a little bit of a snag. These boards that are up are behind the heater and behind the pipe that runs through the heater, so I need to charge my Sawzall battery. And then I'll just cut them right on the top of the heater, but I don't have working electric at the house right now, so I'll probably charge that up before the next time I come. But I'm going to get down the rest of the trim and any of these boards that I can get off that aren't behind the heater, and then maybe start some plaster removal if we get it all off in one wall.
I have really tried my best to get these heaters off myself to make plaster removal easier throughout the house, and I just have not been able to. So I've just accepted the fact that after I get the plumbing and heating upgrades done, I'll have to come back through and get those last few inches of plaster off of the bottom of every wall that had a heater on it. Luckily, it was really just that one wall and this little corner section behind the radiator that I couldn't get these wooden slats off. I really wanted to make sure I got as much of the plaster off as humanly possible during this first pass to make my work in the future a little bit easier. Everything you're seeing in this video took me about an hour and a half to complete, but it was worth it to do those few extra steps because when I come back through to take the plaster down in this room, I won't have to work around so many obstacles or stop to take trim work off as I go, which makes me excited to get after it. I started working on the second floor kitchen again 2 weeks ago. I talked a little bit about this on my live yesterday morning, but basically the plaster removal process is taking a little bit longer than I anticipated, and I've been running into some challenges as I go. This kitchen in particular really tested my patience. The plaster in here is a completely different consistency than what I've run into in the rest of the house. It feels more like concrete or cement than it does plaster, which means it's harder to break apart, harder to scrape off of the walls, and it's much, much heavier. And right about here, I learned the hard way that this heavier plaster can easily break through my bins. Usually when I scrape plaster off into my bins, it just falls apart into smaller pieces that go into the bin or right outside of it. But you can see this one did not break apart as easily and instead chose to completely destroy the side of my green bin. Now, working with 2 bins instead of 3 is really not that big of a deal. Yes, it's convenient to have 3, but I've done plenty of rooms with just 2 bins, so I powered right through. All that was going to mean was making a few more trips to the trash chute as I worked. Unfortunately, I didn't even make it through one more trip to the chute before the plaster from this wall put a baseball-sized hole in the bottom of the orange bin. I thought I'd done a good job of breaking this plaster into smaller pieces, but it had other plans for me. So now the orange one is out of commission as well.
Alright, I'm calling it today. I got the kitchen halfway done. I still have those walls to do. But the green bin is officially dead. The orange one now has a big hole in it, so clearly this plaster is too heavy to just load into the bin and sort of fall into the bin. I'm just gonna let it fall on the ground, and I don't have the energy to finish that today. So, we're leaving it. It's not ideal, but I made a lot of really good progress here, so I'm proud of myself.
The weekend after that, I was in Tampa for my company Christmas party, so I came back on Friday afternoon to finish the plaster removal in the kitchen. To avoid breaking my last usable bin, I just scraped all of the plaster onto the floor with the intention of cleaning it up once everything was down. These last couple walls came down fairly easily, took me about 2 hours. I was feeling really good about how easily I had pivoted and accepted this plan B, but that feeling did not last long because the first bin of plaster that I tried to put down the trash chute broke the chute and broke me.
I'm not having a good time.
Stay tuned for part 2. I was so excited when I realized I could show you what the plaster removal process looks like from inside of a wall. Here you can see where the plaster seeped through the lath, which latched it onto the wall. As I hit the plaster with the sledgehammer, you can see those keys break off of the back of the wall, effectively separating the plaster from the wall itself. Not all of the keys came loose easily, but you'll notice as I work down the wall with the sledgehammer, even some of the keys at the top continue to fall off as I make contact with the plaster further down. In this case, the plaster was separating so well from the wall, I was able to just pull pieces off with my hands. So I brought a bin over to get that done, so that it didn't fall on my head or hurt me as I worked down the rest of the wall. This is also a really good example to show you what plaster removal looks like in real time. You guys usually see it in time lapse, which makes it look like a quick and easy process. And while some walls do go quicker than this one, this is usually the pace that I'm moving now. Now, this was towards the end of a work day, so it's probably slower than I usually move just because of my energy level, but it's a good example of what a typical work day actually looks like. Once I get those larger pieces of plaster pulled off of the wall, there's usually still some stragglers that need to be scraped off. So you'll see here I'm using the long-handled scraper to get the plaster that's still up high. And if you look closely, even in places where the keys came off the back of the wall, there's still plaster in between the lath, and scraping helps to remove most of that. And any that get left behind will just come down when I take off the lath. Towards the bottom of the wall, you can see the plaster did not separate as well as it did at the top. Some of that is because there's trim still around the bottom of the wall, but also sometimes it just doesn't separate, and you really have to use your muscles to scrape it off of the front of the wall, which is exactly what I'm doing here. I know the speed is not as satisfying to watch as my time lapses, but I think having it slowed down does a great job of better illustrating this whole process for you, and hopefully gives you a better understanding of the work and time that goes into this plaster removal process. Once all the plaster is taken down, you can see through the lath to the wall behind it, and all of the keys are just sitting inside of my walls right now. Eventually I will come through with a shop vac and get all of those cleaned out. It's time to get ready to go work on the house. It is freezing cold out today, so I figured I would show you what I'm wearing to stay warm through the winter. First things first is a thermal layer. So I have an Under Armour Cold Gear top on, and then these leggings, I hope you can see it on the camera, they're like fuzzy on the inside, very warm. This is my base layer. Then I add a hoodie, and it could be just any sweatshirt, but while I'm working with plaster, I have a hoodie so that I can put it up and protect my hair from any of the plaster dust. I've added some ski socks. I was just doing boot socks or normal socks for a while, but now that it's getting a lot colder, I prefer the compression and warmth of the ski socks, so that's what we've upgraded to. One of the few things I asked for Christmas was a Carhartt jacket of my own. You've probably seen me wear my dad's. So now I have one. My brother got this for me. I'm gonna wear this for now. I have to run some errands, go to Lowe's and get some tarps. So I'll wear this now and while setting up at the house. But once I get to the house and start working, I'm gonna put my full body zip-up suit back on. So the Carhartt will probably come off, but the goal is to keep my temperature as high as possible until I have to get into that suit, so that way there's not as much time of me freezing my butt off before I start sweating. What I'm also gonna do is prep these hot hands hand warmers. I'll keep them in the pocket of my jacket for now to keep my hands warm. These go in my gloves while I'm working until my hands get too sweaty, and then they just go back in my pockets. And then also I've shown these on my live before. I don't think I've shown them in a video, but I have these hot hands foot warmers. They stick to the bottom of your sock and go in your boot and keep your feet warm, and they work wonders. So if you're in a cold climate, you have trouble keeping your feet warm, you get some of these. They're on Amazon. So I'll put those on before I leave the house now, so my toes are nice and toasty by the time I get to the house. And I almost forgot, when I get to the house too, I'll put my beanie on. I don't love the way I look in hats, so I'm not gonna wear it for the errands that I run, but this goes on, my hair goes back, hood goes up. Let's hope this works. Not to spoil the end of this video, but this room saw a pretty big transformation yesterday. I came in to take the plaster down in the second floor bathroom, and as usual, I started by prepping the space. Because I don't have a dumpster right now, I prepped the kitchen to be kind of a dumping ground for the plaster, and cleared the floor of the bathroom itself so that the debris didn't rip the tarps that I put down. Then I got to work removing any of the trim that was covering pieces of the plaster. That included all of the doors and windows and any of the baseboards that I could get off. But once I started messing with the baseboards in this corner, things got interesting.
So I'm working on taking the baseboard out of this room. And this little piece back here is being very stubborn. This piece was not original to the house, so I assumed all of this had also been added. However, that goes behind this little 2x4. This under here is all drywall. This on this side is also all drywall. So there's that same baseboard that connects through there. I think this whole wall was added. I don't think this was here when the house was built. So I'm excited to open up the wall and see what we're looking at.
This drywall was like soggy cardboard, so it needed to come out anyway, but I also needed to open up the wall to see if it was original and just redone with drywall, or if it was in fact added at a later time. Based on the construction of the wall, the materials used, and the way that it was attached to the ceiling, I could tell it was not original. Another good indicator was definitely the baseboards, which do run from one side of the wall to the other. They're just one piece. And the plaster on the walls runs behind the 2x4s that are right on the sides there. The fixtures in the bathroom would tell me it was updated sometime in the mid-1900s, so I wonder if this wall was added when the bathroom was redone. Oops, here are misplaced progress pictures that should have been in the middle of that last clip, but oh well. After removing the entire wall, I did a quick cleanup, which apparently I forgot to film, but look how open this bathroom is now. I can't wait to see how it turns out. While I worked on plaster removal upstairs this weekend, I got some surprise visitors. It's been a little while since my family's been able to come over and help with any of the house projects, but my parents found some time this weekend to come help me remove some of the trim on the first floor. As far as I know, all of the trim that they're removing in this video is original to the house, and if you've watched any of my previous videos, you know that my intention is to keep as much of the original woodwork and character pieces as possible in this house. And when I was coming through to remove the plaster in these rooms, I was having a very hard time removing the trim without splintering the pieces. It was causing me a lot of frustration and stress, so I ended up leaving the trim work up so that I could come back and remove it when I had a little bit more time and patience to dedicate to it. When my parents showed up and offered to do it for me, I was so grateful. They even came up with a great labeling system for the trim, so that way I know where every single piece goes that they took off of the walls. I did let them know that if any pieces splintered, it would not be the end of the world for me, and that I wanted them to try to save as much trim as was reasonably possible. I'm already going to have to get quite a bit of trim made up to match the original to replace pieces that were just missing. So if there were some stubborn pieces that wouldn't come off in one piece, I decided I was not going to stress it. I'll just replace them with some replica trim. But they managed to get most of them off in one piece, so there's only a few pieces of trim that will need to be replaced. This type of project doesn't lead to satisfying before and after photos, but in my mind it's one of the most important tasks because we're working to save some of that original detailing from the house, which is so important to me. And I'm so thankful that I have family willing to help me with my endeavor. Now that the wall has been removed in this second floor bathroom, it's time to get the plaster off of the walls. I get asked pretty frequently if I'm saving the trim that you see me remove in some of these videos. And the answer is sometimes. In this bathroom, none of the trim was original, so I wasn't super careful when taking it off of the wall, and I don't mind replacing it with new trim when I come back in later. Also, all the windows are being replaced, so sometimes you'll see me pull the whole windowsill or framing out around the window, and when I do that, it's usually because it's already rotting. So while I'm there removing trim, I just take out some of those rotted pieces to make my work easier in the future. If I do run into original trim, I always do my best to keep it. And you can see my parents doing some of that in the video right before this one. I also want to talk a little bit about how wallpaper on the walls affects the plaster removal process. In this room, there were 7, sometimes 8 layers of wallpaper on top of the plaster, and that wallpaper does its best to hold the plaster all together in one piece. So even though the plaster is already separated from the wall in some places, it can become harder to remove, especially in these little corners, because it's trickier to get a little starter piece out of the wall, and then as you go, it just wants to come off in giant pieces instead of small, manageable pieces. That's why in some of these videos, you see me stopping to remove some wallpaper before I take the plaster off. Sometimes that is to save a piece of the wallpaper, but other times it's just to make my life easier. You guys had quite a bit to say about the shape of this toilet, and until you pointed it out in the comments, I didn't realize it was wonky. But now it's all I can see as I watch this footage back. I also got a lot of questions about what this pink box is that's in the middle of the room. And I'll make a separate video to show you, but it's the headway for the stairwell that's right underneath it. This second floor is a 3-bedroom apartment that I'll be renting out, and that back stairwell is how my tenants will access their unit. I haven't shown much of that back entry area because I haven't done really any work out there, but you'll see it in some upcoming videos because I did get the plaster down out there recently. So hopefully that'll help this pink box make a little more sense. Because it is a necessary structure, it has to stay in the bathroom, but my plan is to build storage on top of this all the way up to the ceiling so that it looks like it fits a little better, or at least makes more sense in the space. Originally, this smaller room off of the bathroom was going to be the laundry area for my tenants, and I will still plan to have the washer and dryer in this room somewhere, but the layout's going to change quite a bit now that it's so open. Removing that wall gave me so much more room to work with and made me even more excited to see the final product of this bathroom. I love this question, and this is the perfect morning for me to answer it because I have been dealing with some stress. I'm feeling very overwhelmed by the amount of plaster that still seems to be up in my house. I feel like there's no end in sight. I am tired of taking plaster down, so it's starting to get to me. So let me show you what I'm doing to minimize that stress. I've talked about it a little bit on my lives before, but I'm a planner by nature, so the more detailed plan that I have in place, the more in control I feel. Knowing that about myself, I sat down this morning to outline my progress with plaster removal so I could see how much I got done, how much I have left, and I could plan the end date for this project, or phase of my project. I started by listing every room in my house. I noted which ones had plaster in them, which ones I'd gotten the plaster off of the walls, and then I'll slowly start filling this in as I take the plaster off of the ceilings. And after doing the math, there was 120 surfaces that had plaster on them, so I counted each wall as one surface and every ceiling as one surface, and I've done 80 of them so far. I know from recent work days that I can do an average of about 4 walls or surfaces in a day. That may change when I get to ceilings, but I'm planning off of what I know, which is that I can usually do 4 walls in a day. So if that's the case, I only have 40 more surfaces to go. At 4 walls a day means 10 more days, work days, of plaster removal. A big part of what's causing this stress is that I'm about to go on vacation for 3 weeks. So I'm going to be missing 3 weekends, which puts me further behind my schedule than I'd like to be. But I know I have today, and then I wrote down all the weekends in February, and it works out perfectly that the last day of February that I can work is the 10th work day. So at 4 walls a day, 10 work days left, it means I will be done with plaster removal at the latest by February 28th. Now, obviously, that could change. I may get into ceiling removal and I could move a lot faster or even a lot slower than I'm planning for now, but at least I've wrapped my head around the work that I've done and the work that's left, which makes it feel a lot more manageable for me. So if you're in the middle of a home project or a home renovation and it's feeling overwhelming, very daunting, I highly recommend putting it in writing, getting the actual numbers, and making as detailed a plan as you need to feel more in control of that project. And if anyone has different tips or tricks for managing stress during a home project, put them in the comments so we can help each other out, because what works for me may not work for everybody.
My name, my age, my favorite color, my height, my sign, do I have a lover? What's my nationality?
This is a part of the house that I haven't really shown very much of. It is the landing at the top of the stairwell that's at the back of the house, and this is actually going to be the entrance to the second floor apartment that my tenants will use. I haven't really done a lot of work out here, which is why you haven't seen much of this room or these stairs, but I get a lot of questions about how my tenants are going to access the second floor apartment without going through my unit, and this stairwell is the answer. As usual, I started by prepping the space for plaster removal by removing all of the trim work that was around the window and the doors, and also all of that stuff that was on the wall. So the railing going up the stairs, there were some wires that had a wire cover over it, and a light switch. The camera right now is in the kitchen on the second floor, just to kind of orient you a little bit, and that door across the landing actually leads to a little storage area that will belong to my tenants while they rent from me. This wallpaper is the same one that was up in the side entry, and I got a lot of compliments on it the last time I posted it, so I made sure to save quite a few samples of it, because if you've tuned into any of my lives lately, you know that I am going to be working on some more resin coasters and some keychains that feature the wallpaper from the house, and we'll create a little online pop-up store at some point this year, so that anyone that's interested can own a little piece of Elm Street house. Overall, the plaster removal in this room went really fast. It was coming off the wall in large but manageable pieces. And the trickiest part was this section over the stairs, which got a little dicey because I could barely reach it. But as you'll see towards the end of this video, I actually let some of the plaster just fall down onto the stairs, and I plan to clean all of that up once I get a dumpster again. This wall was also difficult. I put the ladder as close to the edge of that top step as I could and just leaned over with the long-handled scraper. There were some times I was worried that I was going to fall down the stairs, but I managed to stay up and get through all of this without any injuries. Thank goodness. You'll have to wait till the next project update to see the plaster come down off of the stairs, but here's what the landing looks like now. I get this question a lot about what this box is that's just randomly placed in the second floor bathroom. And when I first got the house, I had no idea what it was. I was kind of expecting us to open it up and find some hidden sink or treasures or something, but no, this is a fixture that was built into the house when it was originally built. And luckily I've been doing some work so I can show you. Underneath here are the stairs. Sorry, they're a total mess right now. I just finished taking the plaster out, but this is the stairwell that the tenants will use to get into their apartment. So this box actually creates headway for the stairs. I'll go show you from the other angle so you can see. So here is the top of those stairs we were just looking at from inside the bathroom. They go down the front doors right over there, and there is the box. Here's the little spot where we were peeking out, but this just creates headway so that you don't bonk your head going down the stairs. If you like nice, neat, and clean endings to my videos, this one's probably not for you. I couldn't find an easy way to catch the plaster as it fell down in this stairwell. The tarps obviously fit down the stairs, but because they're so wide, there's just too much extra tarp that had to be folded in on itself, and it became more of a safety hazard than anything else. So instead, as I took the plaster down, I just let it stay wherever it fell. I don't use the back stairwell very often at all, so having the stairs out of commission is not anything that's going to be an inconvenience for me in any way. And then once I'm finished taking down all the plaster next month, I'll get a dumpster back out here, we'll clean it up, and it'll be like it never happened. As many of you now know, this little area here is the space that's created by that pink box that juts out into the second floor bathroom. I was glad to have my long-handled scraper for this part of the project because obviously I can't use a ladder on the stairs, but it did make my shoulders burn for days after. I turned on my flashlight so you guys could see what was going on at this part of the project, but it got so dusty that you literally couldn't see anything, so that was helpful. So I opened up the door at the bottom of the stairs for the second part, and while it did still get dusty, that definitely helped with airflow and moved a lot of the dust out of the space for us. I think most of you know that it's really important for me to be wearing a respirator while working with this plaster, and this really helps to illustrate why. The flash really helps to show just how much dust is flying around, and I definitely do not want to be breathing any of that in. Here's a quick shot of the mess that I made. I told you it wasn't going to be satisfying, but we made progress. So you guys seem very interested in seeing the labeling system that my parents used when removing the trim, so I figured I would show you what they came up with. Here is an example of one of the pieces of trim they labeled. We have 3 pieces of information on all of the trim. First is the room that it came out of. This second piece of information, which I'll explain in a little bit, tells me the wall and the opening that it came off of. And then this just tells me whether it's on the right or left-hand side of whatever door or window it came down off of. So the room and the location of the trim are fairly straightforward, but this middle number is, I think, where the genius of their labeling system comes in. Let me go into the kitchen so that I can explain where we get this letter and where we get the number that follows it. So obviously, all the rooms have 4 walls, and those walls are going to be A through D. Any wall that touches the driveway or is closest to the driveway, you can see my car out there, is going to be wall A, and then as you go around the room clockwise, you get to wall B, then wall C, and finally wall D. The number after that letter tells you which opening on that wall that piece of trim came off of. So this is wall D in the kitchen. This doorway would be D1, and this doorway would be D2. So the piece of trim that went right here, oh, my finger's changing the focus. The piece of trim that went right here would be kitchen D2 left. Hopefully that makes sense. Let me know if you have any other questions or want to see more about the labeling process. Okay, as you can see, we got some snow last night. I just finished shoveling the driveway. I had to come over and do that today because the dumpster is getting picked up tomorrow. It's only about halfway full. I just can't afford to let it sit in the driveway as much. I explained a little bit about that on my live, but it's just not worth paying $20 a day for it to sit there and me maybe get here once a week. So the new plan is, as we take plaster down in the house, I'm going to leave it on tarps or on the floor, and then once everything's out, we'll get the dumpster brought back and throw everything away. But before they pick this one up, I want to make sure that I clear out anything that I have right now that I don't need or that I'm not keeping in the house. I don't really have the setup to do more plaster removal today, so this will be perfect. I was going to clean out the basement, but it's a little bit dark and wet down there right now, so I think I'll save that maybe for the spring. But I've got plenty to do. And also I have no reason for filming back here other than look how pretty it is. So let's get after it. We're on the first floor of the barn right now. So you can see there's some junk here, some insulation that's over there in that clawfoot tub. A bunch of random stuff up in the rafters that maybe I'll get. Oh, I'm probably gonna go change my gloves because these are my nice ski mittens and I don't feel like messing them up with housework. I decided not to venture over there too far because I don't know if you can see here. You can see in the middle there, all of this floor is just missing, just gone. And the closer I get to it, it starts to creak and fall over a little bit, so we're not risking it today. But I am really happy because I have 2 window panes missing on the 3rd floor, and I knew that I was going to need to like put plastic over them for the winter. Look what I found. Perfect. Now I don't have to buy it. Cool. There we go. Here she is.
How I start almost every winter workday at the house. Already sweating. That's Sky now. Halfway done. This part of the driveway was basically an ice rink under all of that snow. Time for a little break. Old shingles for face and buttons. Fireman's hat from the 3rd floor. Lot for the nose. 6 for arms Aubie. He's so cute.
Alright, so the dumpster's getting picked up tomorrow, so it doesn't just sit here costing me money. This is the broken chute that needs to go into the dumpster so that when they pick it up, it goes. I have no real game plan on how I'm getting this down in there, so I'm recording so you can see how this works out for me. Yeah. What made this so tricky is that the chute is tied to the ladder at different points to stabilize it, and because of the way that the chute broke, I couldn't pull the whole thing inside to detach it from the ladder. So I ended up just moving it all around to loosen it up, pushing and pulling on the chute until I got it off of the ladder. Okay, update. I got it most of the way, still on the roof over there, but I'm going to go down and try to save that ratchet strap, push it into the dumpster, and then got the ladder in here, so I'm going to close up this window. That's going to be interesting. We'll get it. I did it. That was way easier than I thought it was going to be. Now, the day is mine. I need to shovel my driveway, which I think I'm going to do first. And then, what else do I have to do? Oh, I'm just going to throw some of the stuff that's like been sitting around that needs to go in the dumpster into it. It's only half full right now, so I may as well make the most of it and get them to haul away some extra stuff. So a few of you wanted to see how the heaters are attached to see if we can figure out how to get them off of the wall. So I took the front panels out, all the little pieces. You can see there are these nails that connect this very top part to the back panel. So those go all the way down. I could pry those out, take this top part off, but this panel is attached to the baseboard. And where we're going to hit some trouble, I think, is these little metal pieces. So they're pushed right up against the back here, and they go all the way around the pipe. Like, there's no way to just slide them out and off without removing the pipe that I can see. So I don't even think I'd be able to pry this off or get the baseboard out from behind it to get to the plaster that's behind the baseboard. But if you have any ideas or things you want me to try, let me know, because there's a lot of this in the house, and if it ends up being a fairly easy thing for me to remove myself, I will do it. So I have 2 clawfoot tubs that I got with the house, and bathroom's right behind me. There was a clawfoot tub in this bathroom that's just been moved out here. It's in really good shape. It's missing a couple of feet, but with a little love and some refinishing, it's gonna be beautiful again. This bathroom will belong to tenants, so I don't know if I'm gonna put a clawfoot tub in there or not, but I will have a clawfoot tub in at least one bathroom in this house, potentially 2. A lot of you have been asking me for an updated house tour, and since I recently finished the plaster removal on this 2nd floor, I thought it was a good time to take you through and give you a 2nd floor update. You'll notice there's still a lot of trim left on this floor, especially in the front half of the house. And in some of the rooms, that's because I did them before I was fully confident removing the trim work, and I was still so worried about breaking any little piece of it. But in rooms like this one, the trim looks like it's original and it's in great shape. So I'm glad that I left it, because I'll be able to come back through and be very careful in removing it so I can save as much as possible. Those first 2 rooms we went through are 2 of the 3 bedrooms on this floor. This room across the landing is the 3rd bedroom. Also, the ceilings are coming down next. If I could go back and do this again, I would take the ceilings down at the same time I took down the walls, just because it would have been easier while everything was already a mess. But I guess hindsight's 20/20. It is what it is. I'll come back through and get the ceilings next. This room here is the living room for the 2nd floor. And second only to my favorite room up on the 3rd floor, this room gets some of the best light in the house, thanks to those big windows that are behind us right now in the tour. This is the pantry with original built-in cabinets that are still really solid. The doors just need some adjusting. Those will stay. You probably remember this kitchen, which has become a dumping ground for Plaster right now because I don't have a dumpster. And then same thing with this bathroom. And this room's actually going to function as both a bathroom and a laundry room now that we have all of this space. Some people were asking what this little room was back here when I took the plaster down in the bathroom, and it's just a cedar-lined closet. The cedar helps to keep bugs out. And last but not least is the entrance to this whole apartment, which is the back stairwell. That was the last room I took the plaster down in, so you probably recognize it. But this is how the tenants get into their little apartment. They will come right up these stairs here that lead to the front door and into the kitchen. Now it's time to head up to the 3rd floor. We are headed up to my favorite floor in the house, the 3rd floor. Not much has happened up here since I did the initial clean out, so I'm very excited to give it some love and to get the plaster down off of these walls. This 3rd floor has 4 bedrooms, plus the landing at the top of the stairs and a little Jack and Jill closet that connects this bedroom to the one next to it. There's no bathroom on this floor, and I had initially considered making this closet into a bathroom, but that would require changing the whole roof line of the house, and instead of doing that, I think I'm just going to break up one of these bedrooms and make it into a bathroom and maybe a walk-in closet so that I have a bit of a master suite up here. But I'll definitely need some sort of bathroom up here because there will be some bedrooms on this floor, and I don't want to have to walk all the way down to the 1st floor if I get up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. This tarp is here because this is the room that had the worst of the water leak. I was trying to catch as much of the water as I could before it made its way down to the 2nd and 1st floor. Some still managed to get through, but I think I did a pretty good job. And this is my favorite room in the house. It gets the best lighting, and I don't know what it is about it, but I just love the vibe. And this will one day be my creative space where all my arts and craft materials and musical instruments will live. But first, we have to get this plaster down. After cleaning up the third floor, it was time to start taking the plaster down. This room is special to me because it is the first room I ever posted on TikTok. This was a storage room previously, so it had lots of treasures to sift through and a lot of cleanup to be done. And since that day this summer, this room has not seen a lot of action. But that is not the case now. We started with this room on the third floor because it is the one closest to the driveway. And I knew that once we got a dumpster, I'd want to put the trash chute out of this room's window, so it was going to become kind of the dumping ground for all of the plaster from all of the bedrooms on the third floor. On these first two tarps, we didn't even use the bins, we just let the plaster fall down onto them, because I knew that's where that plaster was going to sit until we do get that dumpster. But on this last wall, we brought a third tarp in, started filling the bins with the plaster, and transferring it over to our dump piles. Despite how easy the time-lapse makes this look, this room was one of the most challenging plaster removals that Dad and I have had so far. The long slanted wall over the plaster pile is at such an awkward angle, you can't really get much leverage to scrape the plaster off, and it absolutely kills your shoulders. So by the time we had to come do all these little cutouts, our arms were already dead and we still had this long stretch of wall here, but Dad focused on a lot of the detail work and I took down the big wall. This wall took us all the way to lunchtime, and when we came back, we were only able to finish one more wall in a second room. When we're working together, we can usually get through at least a room and a half in a workday, sometimes even 2 rooms, so that just tells you how exhausted we were after completing this one. At this point, we were pretty much done, but there was some plaster stuck down where the baseboard was that I pulled out, and a couple of pieces, little stragglers left on this wall that I took down, and this is what the room looked like when we were done. And that pile of plaster might look big now, but just wait till you see it after we get through some more rooms on the third floor. I have quite a bit to catch you up on, so you're getting 2 project updates today. This is the room directly across the landing from the first bedroom that we removed the plaster in. Dad and I started by removing all of the trim, and he got all of the baseboards out. The baseboards were put in before the floorboards, so they're usually wedged in there pretty tightly, and Dad is the only one that can seem to get them out. I have tried, but I always have to put so much effort in to get them to even move a little bit. It feels like I'm going to throw my back out, so Dad to the rescue. This is the wall that I mentioned in my last video. That was the final wall that Dad and I were able to get through on our workday after completing that first room on the third floor. You can tell we're working a lot slower, and it was at about this point that I told Dad I think I'm done after this wall, which was fine because so was he. I did come back the next day though and finished off this room. I started on this wall but then remembered how difficult the exterior walls are, so I switched over to get that done first so that I wasn't wrapping up my day with the hardest wall of all in this room. Luckily this one came down pretty easily, and then I got to work on this wall, which was pretty satisfying because it was already falling off of the lath, so it required pretty minimal manpower. As I'm going, I'm hauling all of the plaster over to that dump pile that I started in the first bedroom on the third floor, which started out kind of treacherous at first with all of the missing floorboards in this bedroom and in the landing, but after about my 15th trip over there, I had the hang of it and I could probably do it with my eyes closed now. Not that I'm gonna go try. And I know I don't usually sweep up after jobs, but there were some large chunks by the wall, and that just kind of led to a quick sweep of the entire room. I knew it was just going to get messy again, but this took me like 2 minutes, and I know you guys like to see the rooms when they're all cleaned up, so you know I had to do it. And here is where I left the room. The ceiling plaster and then the lath will come down next. This is the first room on the third floor that I did the plaster removal completely on my own. In the first 2 bedrooms that we did on this floor, I had Dad's help. And I strategically picked those 2 bedrooms to be the ones that he helped me with because they had a long slanted wall, which was just so tricky. I was glad to have a second set of hands. And I knew that this bedroom in particular was going to be fairly easy on the slanted side because this is where that really active water leak was. I mean, you can see some of the ceiling had already fallen down by itself. So as you can imagine, this plaster was fairly easy to remove. Because of the water damage, it only came off in little bitty sections, but it was easy to scrape, and that's what I care more about than getting those big, satisfying chunks. In this room, the gap in the floor is too large for me to step over normally, and I definitely didn't want to try to navigate that with a heavy bucket of plaster. So I brought in some of the broken floorboards that I had out in the landing and laid them down to close the gap a little bit, and in this section I used it to put my ladder on while working on the hard to reach sections. As you've probably noticed, I try to start with the exterior walls on any of the rooms that I'm taking plaster down in. Because of the blown-in insulation that is still sitting in some of these exterior walls, there's not a lot of room for the keys from the plaster to fall off into the wall and separate it from the lath. And that's where my crowbar and scraper come in. It just takes a little more muscle to get those pieces separated from the wall. So I knock them out first, that way they are not waiting for me at the end of a workday. And finishing with the easier interior walls makes me feel like such a champ at the end of a long day. Right now we are about 2/3 of the way through this video and I'm still working on my second wall. We have 2 walls to go, so that gives you somewhat of an idea of how much longer these walls are taking me than the next 2 walls will. As many of you know, I still don't have a dumpster at the house. I'm waiting until I get more of the plaster down so I can just fill a dumpster and have it hauled off. And in the meantime, I have turned that first bedroom we did on this floor into the dumping ground for plaster. So every bucket you see me carry out is just going into a huge pile in that bedroom. You can see that pile through this doorway here. I think this room is going to end up being my bedroom. I want to put it on the 3rd floor somewhere, and I just like the shape and the light in the rooms at the front of the house better than the back of the house. And since I already know I want the other one across the landing to be my crafting and music room, that leaves this one to be my room. Next up in this room is getting that ceiling down and all of the lath off of the walls. Stay tuned for more updates. We're going to check out everything that Dad was able to get done when he came to work on the house last weekend. Let's find out.
What I thought was happening while Dad was at my house versus what Mom was organizing. And everyone who was crazy enough to say yes.
Holy guacamole!
Just wait until you see what they got done.